There's a door you keep going back to. You probably don't call it that. You call it unfinished business. One more conversation. An opportunity you're sure would work now that you've changed. But you knew exactly which one I meant before I finished the sentence. And that's why you're here. Not every closed door is God. Some things end because people fail, because seasons run out, because we live in a world where good things break. Anyone who tells you every loss was a personal message from heaven is selling you something. But some doors don't close like that. Some doors close like a hand pulling you back from a street you were already stepping into. Revelation 3:7 describes Jesus as the one who opens and no one can shut, and shuts and no one can open. That's a statement about authority. Access is not ultimately in your hands, and a shut door can be an act of care rather than a verdict on your worth. So here are 6 signs that the door you keep prying at wasn't rejection. It was protection. Hold each one against the real situation you're thinking about, not a hypothetical one. The first sign is the simplest, and it's usually the one we argue with. You are the only one holding it open. Think about the last 3 times that thing came back to life. Who started it? Who wrote the message, deleted it, rewrote it shorter so it would sound casual? Who checked whether it had been read? Who found a reason to be in that room, that thread, that comment section, that part of town? If the honest answer is you, every time, that's information. Working hard is not the same as forcing. Open doors still take courage, but there's a difference between walking through something and prying at it. When the only life a thing has is the life you keep breathing into it, that isn't faith. At some point, you have to admit you're performing CPR on something God allowed to end. Second sign. Every time you go back, peace is the first thing you lose. Not the last, the first. Before the disappointment, before the cost, before the conversation goes the way it always goes, something in you goes tight. You read it 11 times before you send it. You feel that low hum in your chest for the rest of the day. Colossians 3:15 says to let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. The word behind rule carries the sense of an umpire, something that makes the call. Peace is not the same as comfort, and it's not the same as getting what you want. Some of the most peaceful decisions you'll ever make are going to hurt. But when the same door produces the same loss of peace every single time you approach it, that is not a mood anymore. That's a pattern. You keep asking God for a sign, and a pattern is more reliable than a sign, because a pattern can't be manufactured by a good night's sleep or a lonely Tuesday. The third one is the one almost nobody says out loud. You started hiding it. It didn't happen all at once. You just noticed that prayer got awkward around that subject. You'd pray about everything else, and then that one thing would come up and you'd move past it quickly, the way you walk fast past a room you don't want to look into. Then it moved into your friendships. You started editing. The friend who knows you best got the shorter version, then the vaguer version, then nothing. Listen, nothing that is good for you needs to be hidden from your prayers and from the people who love you. Nothing. And I'm not saying that to shame you. Condemnation tells you who you are. Conviction tells you where you are. If you felt something just now, that isn't hypocrisy. That's a conscience still working. Hiding is what we do when part of us already knows the answer and isn't ready to obey it yet. Fourth sign, and here it stops being about feelings and starts being about evidence. What the door was hiding only became visible after it shut. Something became clear afterward that you could not see from the inside. How much of yourself you had been shrinking. The pattern that would have repeated, with interest. The opportunity that would have owned your life. The character of a person you couldn't read honestly while you still needed something from them. Maybe you watched what happened to whoever did walk through the door you wanted and felt something you didn't expect. Relief. Jesus said, "You know a tree by its fruit." Fruit takes time. That's the point of the test. And distance is often the only place you can stand where the fruit becomes visible. In Acts 16, Paul tried to preach in one region and was kept from it. He turned toward another and was blocked again. Scripture records no explanation in the moment. The meaning shows up later, on the other side of the sea. God is not obligated to explain the closing at the time of the closing. Sometimes the explanation is the next year of your life. Fifth sign. You keep calling it unfinished, but nothing there has actually changed in a long time. I want to say this gently because grief is not disobedience. Missing something is not a message. Missing is what love does when it can't find what it loved. It's the receipt for having cared. But memory is a terrible witness. It replays the highlights and quietly edits out the reason you left and the exhaustion you've already forgotten. So ask a colder question. What has actually changed? Not in your imagination, in reality. Has the person changed? Has anything moved at all? Or is the only new development that you've gotten lonelier? Isaiah 43 says, "Don't dwell on the former things, because God is doing a new thing." And then it asks, "Do you not perceive it?" Notice the order. The new thing is often already underway. The reason people miss it is that they're facing the wrong direction. Lot's wife wasn't destroyed for feeling something. She was already out, already rescued. She turned back toward the thing God had just pulled her out of. Grief remembers. Reopening reaches. They wear the same face at 11 at night, and you have to learn to tell them apart. The sixth sign is the one your own history has been trying to tell you. Every time you set it down, even for a week, things got clearer. You slept better. Prayer came back. You could hear yourself think. Maybe something unrelated started moving, and it wasn't spectacular, just the next thing. A conversation. An invitation. Work you didn't expect to like. And every time you pick the old thing back up, the fog came in with it. Proverbs 16:9 says a person plans their way, but the Lord directs their steps. Steps. Not the map, not the 10-year plan. Direction from God usually arrives in step size, and it is almost always available in the direction you're facing, not the direction you're mourning. If your life gets clearer every time you stop forcing it, that is not a coincidence. That is a closed door doing exactly what a closed door is meant to do. So what do you actually do with this? Stop forcing and check your motive while you do it. If you're letting go as a strategy to make it come back, you haven't let go. You've renegotiated. Obedience is not a bargaining position. Pray honestly. Not the polished version. Tell God the true one. I still want it. I don't understand. I'm angry that this is what protection looks like. Psalm 62 says, "Pour out your heart before him. He has never needed you to perform in order to be heard." Test the fruit instead of testing your feelings. Feelings are honest reporters of what you want and unreliable reporters of what is true. Ask what that thing actually produced in you the last time you had it. Bring one wise person into it, not 5 friends who will agree with you, one person who loves you and doesn't need anything from you. And if what you're being pulled back toward involved harm or danger, don't carry that alone. Bring in a pastor or a counselor. Then take the next clear step. Not the one you can't see yet, the obvious one you've been avoiding. And hear me on this. None of this is permission to walk out on a marriage, abandon your family, or drop a responsibility God gave you because it got hard. A hard door and a closed door are not the same thing. Hard doors are usually exactly where obedience happens. Closed doors are where obedience finally gets to rest. Let the grief exist, just don't let it drive. It can ride beside you as long as it needs to, but it cannot have the wheel. Because grief doesn't know where you're going, it only knows where you've been. In Philippians 3, Paul talks about forgetting what lies behind and straining toward what's ahead. Paul was not a man with an empty past. He had things to grieve and things he could never undo. Forgetting there doesn't mean amnesia. It means refusing to keep living in a place God has already carried you out of. You don't have to understand the closing to stop pulling on it. You don't have to feel finished in order to obey. And wanting it doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. If this is your season, leave this prayer in the comments. Not because a comment changes anything in heaven, but because some things get easier to obey once you've said them where you can see them. Lord, help me stop reopening what you closed. And then, let it stay closed. Not because you stopped caring, but because you've decided to trust that the one who shut it sees further down that road than you do, and loves you more than the thing you were reaching for.